Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Hey there, everyone. Ray Flowers, FantasyGuru.com. Hope you're doing well this morning. Thanks for joining me today. Really appreciate it. Thanks for joining me every day here. Thanks for joining us every day here at Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com, Monday through Friday at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We get on here and we rock and roll. We talk baseball. We talk football. We talk basketball. Sometimes we talk of the other sports, too. If you have another sport you want us to talk about, let us know. We do have a bunch of folks over at FantasyGuru.com that cover hockey. They cover college sports. We do DFS, wagering, seasonal, all that stuff. So let us know at fantasyguru.com. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. Hit us up in the chat room or when you're watching the show live, facebook.com/fantasyguruhq. On Twitter, X at fantasygurusite. On YouTube at youtube.com/@elite+network. Leave those comments, thoughts, questions during the show and we can address them throughout the show. You can also type in Fantasy Sports Daily to your podcast network, get set up, and go to fantasyguru.com and simply go to the Elite Plus tab at the top of the page to find this and the other shows on the Elite Plus network. Before we get into things, I just want to a quick comment to everyone. I really love and appreciate the community we've got here on the show. It's starting to grow and get a little bit bigger, and as a result, you start getting more people in. You start worrying a little bit about who people are going to be. Kudos to all of you listening to this, watching this, whatever it might be. We've had like one bad comment in a year. And from my heart to all of you, thank you so much for making this a positive place. There's a lot of hate in the world. There's a lot of dissent. There's a lot of problems in the world. And the fact that our community here on this show has been so excellent at avoiding all of that nonsense, I really appreciate that. And as Jeff Mans has talked about a lot on the Elite Sports Show, that show's on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio from 3 to 6 Eastern Time. As Jeff has talked a lot about on there, mental health is a big thing right now. And not going to go on a long soliloquy here or anything, but everyone, if you have a friend or a coworker or somebody that's struggling, reach out, help them out. There's a lot of people that are confused in this world, a lot of people that are lonely in this world, and frankly, a lot of people that need help. And if you got someone in your life like that, give them a hand. And I think this community we've got here are the kind of people that will do just that. All right, what are we talking about today? Let's talk some head-to-head baseball. It's head-to-head week at fantasyguru.com. It's also rookie week at fantasyguru.com. So today's the final head-to-head day. 4 days in a row, articles talking about head-to-head, players to target and avoid, winning tips, a bet. We've got the roto-verse head-to-head battle. So lots of exciting things here that we're reviewing, including the ideal head-to-head setup. We'll talk a little bit about that here on the show. We'll talk a little bit about the waiver wire. I think that seems to be the biggest bone of contention that people have in terms of how to run their fantasy league, especially in the head-to-head setup. So we'll talk about that. And as you can see, there are a bunch of players to discuss, including Carlos Estevez, who signs with the Royals, and what does that mean for him and Luis Urseg? And then Roki Sasaki. Now, it's also head-to-head week and rookie week, as I noted here at fantasyguru.com. Hard not to look at Sasaki and say that guy's got a chance to win Rookie of the Year and be the best rookie in baseball this year. But there's some disturbing things that have come to light. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Tomorrow at fantasyguru.com, the scouting reports for the hitters go live for the rookies. Saturday, the scouting reports for the pitchers go live. And then on Sunday, we'll have our top 50 rookies for 2025. In about 25 or so minutes, Tyler Beaker will jump in. We'll talk a little bit about coaching changes at the NFL level. Is there anything that's exciting there from a fantasy perspective? We'll talk about best ball. He said, let's talk best ball. Someone in Discord I saw ask a question this morning about best ball. You're all crazy. It's January, but people want to talk best ball. So we'll talk a little best ball with Tyler in a few minutes. And he might even have a early Super Bowl bet. He's got a lot of bets over at fantasyguru.com already for the Super Bowl, trying to get in before the odds change. He'll talk about that here on the show as well. Remember, go to fantasyguru.com, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner, and you can have at it and join the crew there. Get any of the products, get all the products. Always can send a note to support@fantasyguru.com, support@fantasyguru.com. Morning, Henry. Thank you, Tony. And Henry, I really appreciate it. Ray, you're the leader. You set the tone, even though you're a Giants fan. Yeah, that's true. I am a Giants fan. And I'll always be a Giants fan, but I appreciate that, Henry. And Tony said, too, You're stable just like Jeff. You guys make life better. And Doug said also as well, thanks to the shout out to the mental health. You're the best, man. Yeah, it's it's not something that I have I can't. I have personally dealt with this. My significant other in college, when I met her, was quote unquote normal. And it turned out she was bipolar, but that expresses itself during the college years for a lot of people. So I had a contentious multi-year long scenario with my partner that I won't go into detail here, but there were hospitalizations and everything. It was a really big thing. So I've dealt with a lot of mental illness in my past. So yeah, it's something. And if you're struggling, if you're someone listening to this right now, if you're struggling, don't be afraid to reach out. Jeff talked about this on his show too. He said, look, if you're having some issues, talk to somebody. Nothing wrong with that. Maybe you talk to somebody a couple of times and it's great. And that's all you need. Maybe you talk to someone a couple of times and it becomes a couple hundred times. That's fine too. Maybe you talk to someone a couple of times and it's not for you. That's okay. Whatever it is that makes you feel better, that gets you in a better mental space, do it. And all of us be there to support our family and friends, right? That's what it's all about. Okay. Head-to-head or roto. There's a big article over at fantasyguru.com, the pros and cons. I won't relitigate the entire case there. I will say that I'm a huge fan of roto. I prefer roto. I prefer having the opportunity for your team over the course of the entire season to emerge victorious. That's me. I know that a lot of people don't like that. They think the season's too long. They say on June 1st, my team is struggling. I'm already out for the season. What the hell am I going to do? So to that end, every year I run a poll at fantasyguru.com. Well, I don't run the poll. I run the poll actually on Twitter X at @TheRayFlowers. And I'll show the results here in a second. They're actually in the article, but I know not everyone subscribes, though you should subscribe at fantasyguru.com. I run a poll every year and basically just say, hey, look, do you want to play roto or head-to-head? And Jeff and I talked about this on the Elite Sports Show yesterday. Again, that's 3 to 6, Monday through Friday on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. My followers, I would assume on social media, are more roto people. One, because I'm a roto guy at heart. And two, because I was one of the first, I wasn't the first person on Twitter. I was one of the early wave of people. I've been on Twitter since 2009. So I was one of the early wave of people that got onto Twitter. Thank you, Jason Collette, who suggested I do it. And I've answered over 1 million questions, I would bet, on Twitter. If you count DMs, if you count my account, if you count the Sirius account, I probably answered 1 million questions on Twitter. Still not verified because they wouldn't verify me unless I pay, which is bananas. But anyway, I've run a poll every year saying, hey, roto or head-to-head. And given my background and the fact that I started in 2009 when roto was a bigger thing than head-to-head, I continue to be surprised by the results. Let's look at them on the screen right here. The results that come year to year, and I'm stunned as well by the consistency in the percentages. For those of you watching or on demand or live, you can see this stuff here. If not, I'll just talk you through it. 2020, I didn't run a poll in 2021 because we had COVID and, or 2020 was COVID. Why don't I have a 2021 on here? 2020 was COVID. Well, anyway, I'll have to look into that. Maybe I do have a 2021 and I forgot to include it. 2020, 55% of people wanted to play head-to-head. Now remember, listen to this year after year consistency in terms of the voting. 55% wanted head-to-head in 2020. In 2022, that number was 53%. Okay, so it's only 2% difference. If we go on to 2023, it's 54%. If we go on to 2024, it's 54%. So what was it this year? This year, 53%. So I've got 5 different years, 5 different polls, again, at the Ray Flowers. And there's been a 2-point difference year to year to year versus people that want to play head-to-head or roto. That to me is stunning. I mean, that is really, that's within the, as I say, within the margin of error. It's within the margin of error. Like, that's stunning to me that 5 years I have recorded here in this article, the percentage has been off by 2% plus or minus every year. And every year, as you'll note, which you probably have, every year the head-to-head has come out ahead. Every year. So all of you play head-to-head, I guess. No, that's not true because it's 53.4%. It's not everyone. It's a little bit more than half. I am surprised by the consistency and I'm surprised by the results. Again, I hear from a lot of people and I've had debates about people. If you want to have these debates, we can talk about it over in the Discord at fantasyguru.com. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. We've had the debates about it. We've had the discussions about it. I've done shows about it. I've done podcasts about it, on live streams. I've done all these, So I think if any of you have been with me forever, you know my thoughts. If you haven't been with me forever, my biggest issue with head-to-head, the biggest one I have, is that you can game the system. You don't have, the draft is kind of irrelevant because all you do is roll through players every week. There's no incentive to hold on to a player that starts cold because you need guys to perform now. So if the guy starts out after a month and he's no good, you just drop him. Building a good roster on draft day is kind of irrelevant. Even those of you that have had success in head-to-head, you have to admit, when you look at your roster from draft day to the end of the season, 30% of your roster is the same, 40% of your roster is the same. Like, you don't even have half the roster is the same, right? Not half. You may not have your roster a month into the season. And this is particularly shows itself up in the pitching side of things. And there's just, this trolling, rolling, and slashing and burning. I mean, I would say that 2/3, 3/4 of the questions I got last year in the seasonal Discord room at fantasyguru.com were just about, do I start this guy today or not? And it was never, well, it wasn't never. It wasn't usually Logan Webb or George Kirby, who do I pick? It was usually, do I go with Hayden Birdsong? Do I go with Paul Blackburn? Because people were streaming pitchers. And that leads me to, I think, the biggest issue I have, if we're talking broadly, and I'm not spending an hour and a half talking about this here on the show, the biggest issue I have is the way the waiver wire is run in these leagues. Whether you're roto or head-to-head, you should have stricter rules, because let's just say it this way. The open waiver wire thing, and I've decried this for 15 years, open waiver wires is the worst thing going in fantasy sports. It's idiotic. Me, Ray Flowers, I sit at a computer all day. I'm here 12 hours a day, typing, answering questions, writing articles, doing these shows. I see everything. If I'm in a league with open waiver wire, I'm going to get every advantage possible. You're not going to beat me to the waiver wire because I'm on the computer all day. What if you're somebody that's a doctor? What if you're a lawyer? And you don't have to be some fancy person that went to Harvard. What if you're a social worker and you're in and out of rooms with people, helping determine their fate? We're talking about mental health. What if you're in construction? What if you're a ranger? What if you're out and about? What if you're a surf instructor, right? Depending on your job, you may not be able to look at your phone for 5, 6, 8, 10 hours at a time. Maybe longer, maybe 12. Maybe your work shift's 12 hours and you can't use your phone. So open waiver wires are stupid. They're also stupid because you get an advantage whether you live on the East Coast or the West Coast. Time zones matter. If you live in Hawaii, if you live in Europe, it's totally different. I give the example all the time. If the closer's Tanner Scott of the Dodgers, and Tanner Scott blows his arm out at 10:30 at night on the West Coast, I'm still up watching the game. If you're on the East Coast, it's 1:30 in the morning, you're asleep. So I can run to the waiver wire and add Evan Phillips if he's the new closer for the Dodgers. Conversely, if a news story breaks at 8 in the morning East Coast time, if you're living in New York, you jump in there and make the move. It's 5 a.m. I'm asleep. So open waiver wires is ridiculous. It's stupid. No one should use it. It's not 1987. Stop using it. The second option is, well, we run waivers every day. And that means, like at midnight every night it runs. I'm okay with this. Okay, I am. But you all have to be committed to this, because what you need to understand is there's going to be someone in your head-to-head league that's going to make hundreds of moves. Literally going to make hundreds of moves, right? And so then the head-to-head game becomes more of a, I did the most, so I won, versus I'm the smartest, I built the best team, I have the best strategy. No, it's just I bludgeoned you to death with at-bats and innings. If that's what you want, and some people apparently want that. To me, that's crazy. I don't know why anyone would want that, but some people want that. If that's what you want, fine. But if that's not what you want, playing in a league that has daily waivers, even if they're not open, even if they run every night at midnight or whatever it is, having the waiver wire open just to run every day like that is tough, because you have to pay attention every single day. Now, if you're going to do this every single day, if you're going to do waivers once a week on a Sunday, if you're going to do waivers twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever your system is, I think it's vitally important that you have in place a limit for transactions that you can make in a week. And for the season, to be fair, but at least for the week. Now, I would suggest, if you want to make this fair, and I know no one wants to do this, if I was playing in a head-to-head league, which I don't play anymore because, again, it's just not for me, but if I was going to play in the head-to-head setup, the waivers need to run once a week. We need to have some semblance of, you need to build the team properly. You need to have that be important versus just streaming the crap out of everything. Okay. And what I mean by that is you need to have Ceddanne Rafaela on your bench because he plays infield outfield. You need to have Mookie Betts on your bench in your lineup because he moves infield outfield. You need to have the ability to change your lineup. Ray, Rafaela got hurt on a Tuesday. I'm screwed all week. Not if you built your roster properly, because Mookie Betts can slide in for him in the outfield, and then here comes Ha-Seong Kim off the bench to play in the infield. Like, you should build your team properly, because otherwise we end up with a scenario where the teams are unbalanced, the rosters are unbalanced, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Those either play head-to-head. You have 6 bench spots, 5 of them are pitchers, and 1 of them's a hitter. You're not building the team properly. You're just gaming it. All you're doing is playing the system, playing the game better. It has nothing to do with being a good analyst. It has nothing to do with a good draft. It has nothing to do with building a good team. It's irrelevant. You don't want that. At least I don't want that, and I don't know why any of you would want that. There's no point for you to spend 2 plus 3 months in the preseason writing all the thousands and reading all the hundreds of thousands of words I write if by May 15th it's just streaming players. So if you're going to, whatever setup you have to have a limit in terms of the moves. You have to do that. Okay. I ask people this when they say, well, we don't have any limits. Well, then the last head-to-head league, and I've told this story before, the last head-to-head league I was in, someone did 403 or 413. I can't remember. It was one of those 2 moves on the course of the season. The season's 26 weeks. That's 15 moves a week. True story. This actually happened. I was like, screw this. I'm done. I was also done because I lost a head-to-head setup when Barry Bonds and Sammy Sosa, as I've told many times, the 2 best hitters in baseball at the time. And I've written it somewhere. I don't know what they go. They hit 115 the last week combined or something. Just stupid. Anyway, you got to have a limit on the roster moves a week. I would suggest like 5. I mean, come on, man. If you want to get nuts, 7, 1 a day. If you want to get nuts. But there has to be some limit. I would set a limit per week, and I would run the waivers once a week. Because otherwise, all you're doing, because you get no benefit then for drafting a team properly, for making good trades, for balancing your roster, for building an entire roster. All you're merely doing is stuffing stuff into categories. I don't know why anyone would want to do that. Again, I've never understood that. I've heard all the arguments on the other side of things. Patio Joe, who writes a lot of head-to-head stuff because that's his favorite with us over at fantasyguru.com. He and I totally agree on this. I've read all his articles. I just don't agree with it. If you're encouraged in your setup to not build a good team, because I see all your rosters, you ask me the questions, and it's like I said, you have 6 bench spots, 5 of them are pitchers, 6 of them are pitchers. You're not doing anything other than playing the system. You're not trying to build a good team. And the whole point of fantasy is to try to build a good team. If you want to do that, just do a pitching only league, which we've talked about, right? Just do a pitching only league. That's something you could do. If that's what you prefer. Or what I would suggest strongly, if that's what you want to do, and I say this in all sincerity, play DFS. We have a great DFS product at fantasyguru.com. I'm heavily involved in that. You click that subscribe tab on the top right, because if you're the person that says, well, Ray, guys get hurt all the time. My team sucks by May 15th. That's what we have DFS for. That's why DFS was basically invented. Not really. It was to make money. But why it was invented? So that you can pick a new team every day. Doesn't matter what happened yesterday. You can start fresh. That's how because a lot of you seem to have that mindset, which again, totally fine. Do that. Play DFS. So anyway, that's kind of how I see it. That's me. Henry says, 2009 Twitter family, what a different Twitter world, as well as Ray's fight to get the check. Yeah, if you followed me for a while, Henry, and I know you have, I applied like 7, 8, 10 times to get verified, and I was never verified. It's like, I've got 30,000 followers. I got 40,000 followers. I got 50,000 followers. I've got 300,000 tweets. They would never verify me. I sent my driver's license, and like they would never verify me. So anyway, I'm not paying them for it. So at this point, it is what it is. But yeah, it was a different world back in 2009. People actually had conversations back in 2009. Anyway, so that's kind of my head-to-head take here. Again, there's multiple articles over at the site. We've posted one each of the 4 days. Players to target and avoid, head-to-head baseball winning tips, pros and cons, head-to-head versus roto, and the ideal head-to-head setup. So check out all those articles over at fantasyguru.com. Tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday. Hitters, profiles, scouting reports for rookies, pitcher scouting reports for rookies, and then top 50 rookies in 2025. So that's what you have to look forward to the next day. So it's a big week. So get signed up, hit that subscribe tab in the top right corner. All right, let's dive into some of the news and notes before we talk to Tyler Beaker. Roki Sasaki, who will be involved in the top 50, obviously, who will be involved in the scouting report for pitchers, obviously, who is a Dodger. We talked a lot about it, when the Dodgers signed him and blah, 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 the Dodgers spending all this money. So we've talked about Sasaki. But let's dive in a little bit more directly. I have mentioned on numerous occasions in print and on the show that Sasaki, number one pitching prospect, he'd be getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars if he had played long enough across the ocean, all this kind of stuff. And I've also said every time, almost, I think that we've talked about him, that his stuff, while tremendous, has backed up velocity-wise a little bit. It's gone from 100 miles an hour on the fastball to like 98. So let's not get crazy. Remember that his splitter, I was doing a lot more study on this yesterday too. There are a lot of sources, including MLB Pipeline, that believe his splitter is the best pitch in the world. Any pitcher in baseball, any pitch they throw, Sasaki's splitter is the number one pitch in the world. Okay. So let's not get crazy that he's lost a mile an hour in velocity. But when you're 23 years old, should you be losing a mile an hour in velocity? So let's dig in a little bit to his track record. Comes out during his press conference when Sasaki signed with the Dodgers that he was recommended to have Tommy John surgery when he was 18 years old. Didn't have the surgery. Fine. A lot of pitchers had arm issues, and okay. Who was the Yankee pitcher? Shoot. Not Hideki Matsui. Who was the other one? Someone help me out here. The other Asian import to the Yankees. With an M. Something with an M. I'll think of it in a second. He had an elbow issue. He was supposed to have Tommy John surgery, never did, and he pitched until he was 38 years old. He went back to Japan after he played here. So you can do it. But it's something to think about. Sasaki didn't have the surgery, but he was told he could have the surgery. Sasaki himself, during his press conference, also talked about the fact that one of the reasons he came to the United States to play in the bigs before he hit 30 years of age, before he was able to make that huge, massive contract, was because he had a couple of health scares and he wanted to get over here and play. It's a true story. Okay. That's potential health issues made him want to come here. That's another concern. He's never thrown 130 innings as a professional. Not 130, not 170, 160, 130. He's never got there. Okay. Remember back to when he was 17 years old and he kind of burst on the world scene. In the Koshien tournament, as a 17-year-old, he had a 21 strikeout, 12 inning, 194 pitch game. 194, Nolan Ryan style, 194 pitches as a 17-year-old. Okay. So what did he do, by the way, when he was told to have Tommy John surgery or recommended he could have Tommy John surgery? What did he do? He said, well, he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to have the procedure. So what did he do? He studied his mechanics and such, and then thought that the reason he was having problems with his elbows because his shoulder wasn't strong enough. So he worked on strengthening his shoulder, changing his pitching mechanics up a little bit. And obviously he hasn't blown his arm out yet, but these are a lot of red flags. A lot. I'm trying to look up something. Here we go. Let's see. Japanese players. Masahiro Tanaka was the guy. Come on, folks. No one jumped in the chat room. Masahiro Tanaka was the guy I was talking about, who hurt his arm for years, was supposed to have a had UCL problem for years and pitched through it. But Sasaki's an interesting case because talent-wise, he's elite. Situationally, going to the Dodgers, their winning environment, that's spectacular. The question is, what do the Dodgers do with him? Remember, for years now, Dodgers don't have anyone throw 140 innings. Like, no one gets there. They just don't. They're injured. They baby him. They call guys up from the minors. They roll through their Rolodex. Guys don't throw 150 innings for the Dodgers. They hardly ever throw 140 innings for the Dodgers. So saying he throws 130 innings this year for the first time, that would basically make him a normal Dodger starting pitcher for the last handful of years. The Dodgers do have a multitude or a boatload of starting pitching options, including a guy like Dustin May who's coming back from injury, right? So this is like, Sasaki's tough. I think the league and the cost for Sasaki is really going to be dependent upon whether or not we're drafting Sasaki. I'm looking at the ADP right now over at the NFBC. His ADP is inside the top 100 overall. Let's look at positioning for pitchers. Let's see, high is Sasaki going. Sasaki, I learned how to spell. It's going 35th at the NFBC. That includes relievers. So let's say he's at 25 or 27 for starting pitchers. That's higher than I've got him ranked at fantasyguru.com. And I could be wrong, but this information has got to make you a little bit nervous. So I would say at the end of the day, whether you agree with the ADP, you agree with the rankings over at fantasyguru.com, whatever it is, don't be a hero of Sasaki. Don't aggressively push him up draft boards. Like, if he's there and you want to take him, okay. But don't take him in the 5th round. Don't get crazy. Don't get aggressive. There's a lot of concerns health-wise. Remember, everything in the United States is different. The ball is different. The parks are different. The umpiring is different. The length of the season is different. The weekly schedule is different. There's obviously the off the field, the adjustment, everything in this kid. And he's 23. He's not 28. All of it stuff. Be cautious with Sasaki. The talent we love, including me. You'll see that in the scouting report that comes out on Saturday. Don't get super aggressive would be my recommendation. Still could win Rookie of the Year. Still could be the #1 rookie pitcher. All that. Yeah, absolutely true. He could be what Yamamoto was last year. Absolutely. But there's got to be some caution. Speaking of caution, next week we'll have the debut of the closer grid, the debut of the Solds rankings over at fantasyguru.com as we kind of finish up the rankings and start getting into the individual players. And I was just looking at the closer grid. I was actually starting to put the closer grid together yesterday. And of course, and I'm not exaggerating, it's hilarious how this goes. And we'll talk to Tyler Beaker in a few minutes, and he probably knows what I'm talking about. Within an hour of me finishing my prep for the closer grid, which was basically putting the closer grid together, it's going to wait to make some news and notes and kind of adjust that. Basically, within an hour of me completing that, the Royals made a signing, of Carlos Estevez, which changes their entire bullpen structure. So it was immediately upon me doing it, this is what happened. They did the Royals, Estevez to a 2-year deal for $20 million. There's a $13 million team option after that and a $2 million buyout, something like that. So it could be a three-year deal. The Royals aren't the Dodgers. So I don't think they gave $20 million guaranteed over 2 years to Estevez to be the setup guy. So Lucas Erceg, who pitched really well down the stretch last season after being acquired from the Athletics, he's got to be looked at as a setup man now. Just has to be. Estevez has to be now looked at as the closer of the Jays. He's been effective without being stupendous. There are concerns with Estevez. He's not one of these elite level closers. He's not Hall of Fame bound. He's not Mr. Consistent from start to start, but he gets outs. If he goes to the Royals, he is now the Royals closer, in my opinion. We'll get all the press conference and everything to verify all this, but he flies up the rankings. We've adjusted the rankings over at fantasyguru.com. Erceg doesn't plummet, but he plummets down the rankings because instead of looking at a guy who might save 25 games, he's now looking at a guy who might save 8 games. It doesn't mean the Royals are going to go, balls to the wall with Estevez and not use Erceg. How this goes, they're going to probably mix and match again. Estevez is not a top-end closer. But the fact is, that was a good signing by the Royals, fair signing by the Royals, smart signing by the Royals, but it did throw a little bit of a wrench in the old situation, as they say in the fantasy space. So that's that. I didn't get a chance to get to the rest of the baseball stuff. I'll get to it tomorrow. We got plenty of time. Don't worry. We'll be back again tomorrow. We're here every day, Monday through Friday, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. But I don't want to keep our guest waiting too long, number one. Number two, he's nice enough to come and join us every Thursday, so we have to respect that. And number three, I have the Chiefs Stadium behind me and the Rockets red glare or whatever is going on behind my head, and he's a football guy. So let's bring him in right now. Let's have a discussion. I know the season is all over but one game, but as we'll find out in our discussion here, season never really ends. So let's welcome in Tyler Beaker, fantasyguru.com. How you doing today, Tyler?
Doing pretty good, Ray. Nice little slow week of NFL action where there's just not much going on. So enjoying the little hiatus until the frenzy of the Super Bowl kicks in next weekend. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Speaking of that, do you like the 2 weeks?
No.
Do you like the delay? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish they would just do it and then put usually they have the Pro Bowl this in between week. I'd rather them just do that the following week as the final exclamation point in the season. This extra week of just the charade that the noise and all the extracurriculars that occur these 2 weeks is just a bit too much. It's just too much.
I saw the practice report yesterday. According to the practice report yesterday, was anyone even practicing? Every Chiefs player practice and no Eagles player practice. Like, it was hilarious. We were joking about it. It's like, what are they even practice? Like, what are they doing? Watching film? I think it's interesting. I get the 2-week thing. I get it. I would say that whether it's 2 weeks or 1 week, everyone's still watching the Super Bowl. They're not gaining anything, that way. They're creating storylines. Everyone's going to watch Super Bowl. Okay. And it is weird to think that, every week you do this game week to week to week to week, and then you get to the biggest game of the year and everyone gets an extra week. So, maybe the best team doesn't always win this because the coaching staff spends an extra 4 days in the film room where they don't during the season. Maybe that's what the NFL wants. Maybe they feel like the better team will win in that scenario. But it's a weird one. I agree with you on that. It's never felt right to me. It seems like it's just too much.
Yeah, I will say that the expansion to an extra week in the regular season, I don't dislike this hiatus. Like, I'm kind of at my football fatigue right now.
Right.
So, like, having nothing going on this Sunday kind of builds up the anticipation for next weekend. I'll say that at least.
Yeah, we set a positive example. There we go.
Yeah.
If you stick around, Tyler might be sharing one of his prop bets for the Super Bowl. By the way, I've already seen you throw a bunch of those up in Discord over at fantasyguru.com. The idea being that you want to get in now before the market gets saturated and the odds change. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Correct. I didn't want to bet a lot of overs, but the overs that I did want to hit, I wanted to hit early in the week, knowing that they would be juiced up with 2 weeks of people to analyze and spend a lot of time pouring over these markets. The opening lines have already been steamed pretty heavily, given that there's not any other NFL games for people to look at. There aren't other NFL games for the other bookmakers to be distracted by. So they've got all of their attention here. Once they see kind of heavy money coming in on any singular one prop, they are adjusting right away. So there were a few that I dropped initially in the week, but I really just plan on spreading action out, saving a lot more of my unders towards later in the week. But some of that's trying to predict the market. Usually we do a really good job at that. The closing line value we've gotten at Fantasy Guru has been substantial all season long. That doesn't guarantee a win, but it does tell us we're at least pointing ourselves in the right direction, giving ourselves the best position to succeed with a lower number or a higher number, whether it's toward an over or an under.
And again, Tyler, if you stick around, he'll have something. He's promised he will. I assume he will. Speaking of that, one other thing, because I know there was a little bit of back and forth in Discord this week. Some people are newer to betting, or maybe they don't have access to alt lines, right? But like, there was a debate that's not even real. Yeah, alt lines are a real thing, and for those people that don't know, it allows you to change the odds. You change the number and it changes the odds. So maybe it goes from a plus 120 to a minus 110 because you drop the difference, but you have a better chance of winning the bet. Are you in favor of alt lines? I know that I see you, talking to them and everything. Are you in favor of that, knowing that some people don't really get involved in the alt line market? Is that something that they should be getting involved in if they have the opportunity?
That's the key thing, opportunity. And that's why I think alt lines are exploitable whenever you have the option to take advantage of them. Not everybody has that luxury, which is why I don't really have that as the primary, I'll say, the volume of my bets are not alt lines, because I want to get plays out there that everyone can attack. That said, I also play bets very early in the week. Like, I'm not waiting until Saturday evening right before the Super Bowl to post all these, because the numbers do move. So one thing that I try to do is get bets out that everyone can get. And as soon as I make the play myself, I push a notification in our Discord so that you guys are able to get those same lines at those same values before they get steamed up. Alt lines can allow you to delay that publication of types of bets because you have the ability to submit them later. And usually those alt lines are going to change the value in terms of like the sense in which you'll get on that. But it doesn't change in the same drastic manner of the yardage total, which is the bigger hurdle to clear. So I think there's pros and cons to it. I'll say that as a content provider, I think there's probably a bit more value in us giving out straight lines. But even if we give out straight lines, you guys are all going to want to parlay alts with them anyway. So take it for what it is. Betting is a growing market. Hopefully more and more states allow more and more books, which allow more and more variations of betting, which include these alt lines, which when you start combining them together, you can get some really favorable plays that A, correlate, which is really tough to get, and B, come in at a nice price for you in terms of when they hit, you are not spending minus 150 on a play for them to just get one unit. You can get some like plus 150s where you get a little bit of extra cheddar on the side to help increase your bankroll.
Tyler Beaker of fantasyguru.com. Tyler, one last question here. If people are new to betting, if they're not getting involved, maybe they're just the Super Bowl better, right? Why would I want to place a bet on Travis Kelce for 5 catches? Because what if he goes out on Tuesday night with Taylor Swift and blows his knee out on the dance floor? What does the sportsbook do then? Do they give you your money back? Is it tough titty because you placed the bet? How does that work?
Well, it could be tough titty if he suits up. The issue, there is no real issue with a player that gets injured. So like some of these risks that you can take are absolutely mitigated where the player needs to play an offensive snap or a defensive snap to qualify. Some books will allow special team snaps, so that's important when we're playing unders. They at least need to be on the field, though. So read the rules carefully. That varies book to book. Some books won't allow a special teams to count towards an offensive or defensive snap. But yeah, if a player is injured and doesn't play on the field, then that bet would be voided for an example like this situation.
Okay. Tyler Beaker of fantasyguru.com. Let's jump into some of the coaching changes here, and we'll get into some specifics in a second. Not every head coach calls defensive or offensive plays. A lot of the coaches that get hired anymore are offensive-minded guys, and some of them do call plays. Some of them don't. So when we talk about a head coach hiring, how important is that if they call plays versus they don't call plays? If they don't call the plays and they're just the head coach, do people spend too much time talking about the head coach and then not enough about the OC? Or is that the entire coaching staff? Your thought process is the coaching staff sits there all throughout the week and they all sit down together and plan things. So the head coach is still involved, even though he's not calling plays on game day. What are your thoughts on that, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm sure every coaching tree has this done a little bit differently, but I put the most value in the offensive coordinators that call the plays on Sundays, given that they're calling their own plays, they're designing their own plays, they're implementing them. The head coach has a lot of responsibilities. If we're in an offensive system where a offensive coordinator is the one calling the plays, that just alleviates some of the day-to-day stuff that the head coach has to do, particularly on Sundays when all the chaos is ensuing and the bullets are flying. I prefer to put my weight of valuing what those types of OCs do a bit more than the head coaches that do that, unless they're a offensive-minded head coach calling offensive plays or a defensive-minded head coach calling defensive plays. That would be the one change. But if we've got Belichick running the entire organization, I think we could put it with a bit of a grain of salt.
Tyler, we have 2 situations I think in particular that really pop from an excitement perspective in the fantasy space, and that's Liam Coen to the Jaguars after what just happened with the Bucks, and then Ben Johnson to Chicago after what's happened with the Lions. Talk us through those 2 situations in particular, because I think the Jaguars and the Bears, those new head coaches, those are probably the 2 spots that people are most excited about here in the early going, looking ahead to 2025.
Yeah, Cohen's an interesting hire. I think he's an exciting one. Comes from the McVay coaching tree. Spent some time with the Rams. Spent some time with the Kentucky Wildcats before last year being the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator. And despite the injuries that the Bucs had on the offensive line, wide receiver, we still saw a very, very potent offense with Baker Mayfield producing his best statistical campaign of his career. He posted his best marks in pass completions, passing yards, passing touchdowns, passer rating, passing, like it's just across the board.
Big numbers too, not just his career best, like big numbers. Yeah,
exactly. And it wasn't just the pass game that excelled. They also went from ranking 32nd in rushing yards in 2023 all the way up to 4th in 2024. And that's not just because of them getting Bucky Irving. The offensive line got a lot better. They added some players. The Bucs overall, collectively, offensively, they finished 5th in overall EPA per play. And they tied the Ravens in number 2 in offensive success rate. This was a really well-oiled machine, and I'm not surprised at all to see him quickly go from offensive coordinator to head coach. I think this guy is really special, and the hope is we see that same kind of turnaround in Jacksonville, where the nucleus, when you look at like the pieces there, Trevor Lawrence, Etienne, Brian Thomas Jr., Christian Kirk, Evan Engram, and then offensive line, I was looking back, they're all at least a second-round selection or higher. Granted, some were by different administrations and teams, but the capital has been spent on that offensive line. I wouldn't be shocked to see another overnight type of spike in overall efficiency and performance from Jacksonville, who they still have a struggling defense. Okay, let's not forget that. the same could be said with the Bucks last year. They had a lot of injuries pile up in the secondary, particularly at safety and cornerback. Jacksonville has a lot to go through there in terms of reshaping their secondary as well. So it's almost a very apples to apples comparison where they're probably going to put them in positions where they're going to have to put up points. I think Jacksonville makes a big hike under Coen, and I'm really excited to draft these guys here. And well, I did my first draft already today. I'm very excited to draft these guys in 2025.
We'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Sure.
Ben Johnson to Chicago. Same kind of thing? Same kind of excitement?
Not the same exact type. I think there's some questions that you can make in terms of the offensive line, and it's more open-ended in terms of the offensive weapons there too, like what happens with a guy like Keenan Allen. But yeah, Ben Johnson, highly sought after coordinator these last 2 coaching cycles, finally picks a team to go to, and no surprise he goes to a team with a round 1 selection like Caleb Williams. I think it's a great fit for Caleb in terms of trying to maximize the most out of him. We saw the Shane Waldron mess really not do well the first half of the year. They changed play callers to Thomas Brown. Finally started getting some momentum there, but I feel like there was another wall that Caleb hit, where I'm really expecting the implementation of Ben Johnson's offense to speed up play calling and speed up the processing, get the ball out of Caleb's hands quickly. They need to get some more weapons, though. I like the weapons that they have at pass catcher, but a third one I think would be a really, really helpful play. Or moving DJ Moore fully into the slot, which is something I think we talked about last week, actually, where he had a very, very high 3+ yards per out run rate in 2023, his first year in Chicago before the 2024 season. So we've seen it before with DJ Moore being it wasn't a full-time slot, but a decent amount of reps in there where I at least am going to leave the light on for DJ Moore to have a Amon-Ra St. Brown just offensive spike to a top 10 fantasy campaign. If whoever is operating that slot is what we want to target with Ben Johnson. That's what I know.
Tyler Beaker of fantasyguru.com. There's a couple other signings. Mike Vrabel to the Patriots. We know Mike Vrabel. We know the team's going to improve and all that, but he does not have a history of 30-point games and explosive offenses, and the Patriots don't have those weapons right now anyway. You've got Pete Carroll going to the Raiders. We don't know who the Raiders quarterback's going to be. We don't know who the Raiders running back's going to be. We don't know who the number 2, 3, 4 receiver on the Raiders is at the wide receiver position. There's a lot of we got to figure this out kind of thing there. But either Vrabel or Carroll, either one of those excite you from an offensive perspective in 2025?
I'll say the Patriots kind of do, because I felt like there were pure training wheels put on Drake May under this Alex Van Pelt system. Not a single designed run at all. How are you going to draft a mobile quarterback and then not let him run the ball?
He ran for 30 or 40 yards every week on scrambles anyway, but yeah, it's right.
He's so good. Yes, yeah. He is such a dynamic runner. Fantasy-wise, he does exactly what we like. He has the ability to run, and he's got a cannon where he is loving to taking risks. We saw a lot of interceptions in year 1. That's going to happen with a rookie, particularly with the offensive weapons here. Wouldn't be shocked if we saw a Jacoby Myers reunion coming back to New England, joins Josh McDaniels, who McDaniels brought him to Las Vegas back then. Yeah, I think that would be the more exciting play, but that's more excitement around McDaniels than it is about Vrabel, who's more of the rah-rah guy. Right.
The Saints don't have a head coach unless I'm losing my mind. I think Kellen Moore seems to be the guy that they've kind of focused on at this point. Moore's name has been mentioned for a couple of years now as a potential head coach. He's obviously an offensive coordinator, all that kind of stuff. That intrigue you if that's how it ends up? I mean, the Saints, I was talking to Jeff Mans about this yesterday, they got to get some skill players that are healthy. Their pass catching group was a disaster this year for health perspective. But Kellen Moore, the Saints, give you a little bit of hope after that offense has kind of been buttoned down for a few years?
It's kind of tough. I don't understand, first of all, why this whole coaching thing isn't done until the postseason's over. Bizarre. Where this guy now, Kellen Moore, has to not only plan for a Super Bowl, he also has to try to assemble a staff while other coordinators are being plucked here and there, where the pool is quickly diluting in terms of quality talent. Speaking of quality talent, that's not really evident on the Saints right now. A lot of older players, a lot of expiring expensive contracts. They are minus $70 million in cap space right now. Sure, we'll see Mickey Loomis do some magic and some Harry Potter stuff to try to disappear that, but I don't know. I think it's going to be a really tough call for Kellen Moore here. I will say what did impress me was in Dallas, he went with a pass-heavy approach with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and all those guys, almost to the point where he got him fired. That's why they took McCarthy, who wanted to play a bit more conservatively. Right. Oddly enough, McCarthy still put his foot on the gas pass-wise too. So I digress. He also went run-heavy in Philadelphia, maximizing the talents with the Eagles. The question is, what does he maximize in New Orleans? Right. They've got 33-year-old Derek Carr. They've got an albatross of a contract with Taysom Hill. They've got Chris Olave. They've got Rashid Shaheed. They've got some quality offensive linemen if they can stay healthy. Maybe they try to do a big play action heavy offense, but I don't know. I think until we find the quarterback, it's kind of an open-ended question for how well the Saints can do. But I am excited with what Kellen Moore brings to the table, and I'm excited to see him as his first chance to get a head coaching opportunity, and the Saints just not bringing in a retread, another guy that's just been around the block. Moore, maybe when push comes to shove, we'll finally see what he's made of in terms of the metal. I'm excited for this one.
Tyler Beaker of fantasyguru.com, and Tyler and I were chatting before the show about, hey, Tyler, anything you want to talk about? And Tyler said, best ball. And I was like, oh, gosh, here we go. And this morning in Discord, I don't know if you saw it, there was a question about best ball and your rankings. So I guess you have your finger on the pulse here, Tyler. To me, and you mentioned earlier, just a few minutes ago, you've already done a draft. Oh, my gosh. I was going to ask you when it's too early to draft, but apparently there is no too early. It's January. We don't even know who head coaches are for all the teams, all this kind of stuff. So get involved now. Like, what's the strategy now? Because it's got to be different than if you're drafting in July or August, because we just don't even, the draft hasn't happened, the coaching. Talk us through a draft strategy that you would employ right now if you're going to get involved this early.
Yeah, I'll talk about Underdog because they launched their flagship programs this past Sunday. The big board, little board, and 3 other contests right now. And just between the big board and the little board, they've already have about 42,000 entrants already. Wow. We divide that by 12. That means 3,500 drafts have already taken place since Sunday. So 4 days in, 5 days in. The people want to draft, Ray. They want to.
They sure do. No doubt.
I don't disagree. It's a little crazy. Okay. I also think there are ways to mitigate that craziness in terms of finding a way to become profitable. Right. One thing I will note here is these drafts are expanded to 20 rounds instead of the 18 that they typically are for Underdog. Take advantage of that by adding depth at the onesie positions, which are quarterback and tight end. For those unfamiliar with Underdog's platform, it's quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. 20 rounds to make your draft picks. It's best ball, so there's no other offseason management. There's no waivers. There's nothing. We're drafting these teams in February, right, hoping they will win next early January.
11 months later.
Yeah. So there's chaos to that. So we need to build in some safety. We don't know bye weeks, so we need to add depth to these onesie positions as well. We need to take some swings on these rookies. There's the chance that a round 7 or 8 in ADP rookie right now balloons up to round 3 or 4 by August. I don't think they should be the anchor and the center of your drafting right now. I prefer to lean on veterans. I prefer to lean on healthy veterans that are going to known offenses where there's not a lot of offseason change, with a high emphasis on year 2 and year 3 guys that are known to make those leaps in productivity. That's what I'm really focusing on. But I will sprinkle in rookies, particularly in the late part of my drafts. And then the more I draft, the more I want to sprinkle in guys in like the middle rounds, where these are the guys that have the ability to make that leap in the round 3 through 5 or whatever come August. Also, one thing I'd recommend, this is not for Underdog, this is for anyone and other platforms, play in confined drafts in terms of the timeline. So the way Underdog has these drafts structured is they are either going to end if they don't fill before the NFL draft, or they are going to fill before April 25th or whatever that is. Mm-hmm. Play within a draft that has an expiring clock like that. So you're all playing with the same information. We're not playing against teams that know Travis Hunter goes number 2 overall, right, to a team that wants to use him solely as a corner and not a wide receiver, where his value at a 150 ADP plummets to undraftable if he's playing pure cornerback. Right. So you're all playing with the same information. We're all looking at rookies at the same time. We're all able to Google the same rookie college stats that all these guys have done. You don't need to really diversify your teams in terms of getting wacky with builds or roster construction. I'd say the typical build would probably be about 2 to 3 quarterbacks, 6 to 8 running backs, 7 to 9 wide receivers, and 2 to 3 tight ends. You can go 2 at the QB and tight end position, but I would go no less. You're really rolling the dice there when you do that, but I think there's a merit to it if you're especially weak at one position, whether it be running back, receiver, or tight end, to load up there elsewhere. That's not crazy about. I think you can do the weirder 0 RB drafts and things like that, and the funky draft styles later in July or August when we have more definitive information and better information. For now, I feel like it's getting a little bit too cute. I would also be very cognizant of players that are either entering free agency, players that are coming off injury, and the timelines for the expectation for them to return, that being the keynote. And players that are seeing either new coaching or new quarterbacks leading their offenses. Because that bucket of those 3 players I just mentioned there's a much wider range of outcomes there. So don't avoid them entirely, but be cognizant of it when you're assembling your draft. And if you're through 20 rounds, out of 20 rounds, you probably want to be selective with maybe like 3 to 5 of those types of players. Probably not anymore. Again, we're trying to find high floor options that we know can succeed. We also want to make bets on ascending talent or guys that we expect to beat ADP by the time August rolls around. There's a lot to encapsulate here, so I'm trying to like rapid fire all these bullet points that are going through my mind right now. That's pretty much it. Anything you'd like to ask?
Yeah, let me ask you this, because I will freely admit I've played like 3 or 4 best balls. I'm not a best ball guy. It's just I do baseball. I don't have the bandwidth for it. So what you're saying, which was a good point because I was going to ask this, you were saying, okay, be in a tournament now, sign up for one that has that definitive end date. So what you're saying is all of these early drafts, let's call them early drafts before the NFL draft. All these early drafts are one. Any draft done in July or August is different. So it's like 2 separate tournaments if we're being stupid about it, so that we're not competing across the spectrum.
That's which we're all on the same level playing field here, which is very important.
Okay. If let's say the average person's going to do 20 of these drafts, 5 now, 15 later, 2 now, 18 later, 10 and 10. Do you think you have an advantage drafting now? You have an advantage drafting later? Like, what would you suggest in terms of a mix? Let's say I've got 20 entries I'm going to do. How many early, how many late?
I like to spread mine out because I feel like we get more information the closer we get to the NFL draft. We also lose value in terms of the average draft position for some of these guys. The closer we get to the draft, we get through the NFL combines, we get through the interviews. We know we can link up where we're expecting players to go in terms of either the round or even the team a bit more as we get closer to April. At this time right now, there's a wide range of outcomes and expectations for these rookies. So I will try to get some of the earlier selections of guys that I'm projecting. I'd try to target those guys now, knowing that there's a chance that when we're competing against other teams that are drafting in March or April, we're probably facing an ADP disparity there where they're cheaper right now than they will be 6 to 8 weeks from now. That would be the one thing I'd recommend.
And I think what your strategy that you laid out there makes all the sense in the world to me. But what someone listening to that is thinking, it's a great strategy, Tyler, but I'm not going to win the overall championship doing that. I'm going to take all the rookies. I'm going to take even though it's early, I don't even know what team they're. Genty's my guy. I'm taking him in the first round. No, only do that if you have 10 teams. Don't do it at all, because you kind of suggested you would soft pedal that, which again I agree with. But there's going to be that other line of thought that is, well, if everyone's kind of doing that, I got to zig while they're zagging, and I got to do the aggressive approach. But you're just not a fan of that.
There are 11 other drafters with you. I guarantee at least one person's getting very rookie heavy in that draft with you. So you can try to out rookie that man or woman. Best of luck. People are gearing up for their dynasty drafts, their rookie drafts, rookie fever. We're only just getting the little, the cough is coming around right now. Pretty soon it'll become very, very big sickness where everyone's just elevating these rookies out of pure desire and pure lust. And it'll just get to a point where it makes much more sense to just grab a veteran on a known offense. You can try to keep up with people like that, but it's tough.
For those people that have never done an Underdog best ball draft like this, what's the general cost of one of these, Tyler?
Sure. Like the big board and the little board are their 2 flagship programs right now. Big board is a $10 entry fee. It's a 150 max. You don't have to 150 max it. You can throw in 10 entries. And then the little board is a $3 entry, and I believe that's 50 max. That one's already 14% filled as of this morning. So these things are already starting to get some interest right now. Again, you don't have to throw a bunch of money in there. I just deposited $10 and I played one $10 big board. It's up to you guys how much volume you want to play. I like to go light in this because I feel my advantage comes later in August when I have a lot more information and there's less guesswork. But I also know that there's a lot of mistakes people tend to make in these types of drafts where there's still an advantage. I will probably be putting out some drafts for these specific contests next week. I don't want to do it this week because I still feel like it's a bit early. I kind of want ADP to settle in.
That was my next question. You're gonna have rankings officially too?
We'll have some rankings out, yes.
Okay.
Over at fantasyguru.com. They'll be downloadable, so you can upload them to Underdog, and then it'll be setting where you can use them as your default rankings instead of ADP.
That's great because a lot of companies say they can do that and it doesn't always work. So being able to provide that at FG for the user is fantastic. Then you just go boop 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 and you've got it all taken care of. You don't have to cross reference and all that kind of stuff. Okay. No, because again, me, the playoffs hit, and my schedule's different. The playoffs hit, and I'm full in baseball. Like I do baseball and football most of the season anyway, because I'm, once Halloween hits, I'm doing baseball. But once the regular season ends, I kind of like just mentally flip over and I'm into baseball. So this is not my game. It's not my bag, baby. Yeah, it's just not. But I know some people, because again, you're doing it. We got comments in Discord. People are doing it. So I'm glad that we touched on it here because I would have never thought to just touch on it, to be honest, because I'm just not thinking about that. Mm-hmm. So that's future, well now, but for the future. By the way, how long does it take to do draft? Like an hour? They go pretty quick, right?
Yeah, about an hour. If you can do a fast draft, which is 30 seconds per pick, or a slow draft. Slow draft will probably take a week and a half right now. Again, it depends on your room. Some will go faster, some will go slower. I wanted to look up the big board to see how much it offered up top as the top prize.
Okay. You're looking at that.
$250,000, $250K.
For $10.
Not bad for $10.
How many? And just to tell the listeners or remind them, you're a best ball sicko, Tyler. How many best ball leagues were you in last year?
In the hundreds. I honestly don't know.
Hundreds.
Could be like 400. Yeah.
Jeez, Tyler Beaker. We pay well at fantasyguru.com apparently. Tyler Beaker, fantasyguru.com. Before we let you run, Tyler, and thanks for that rundown. And again, Tyler's in Discord. If you want to ask him questions, happy to help you out. As he noted, he'll have articles and rankings coming out here next week at fantasyguru.com. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. If you don't see the product or you're interested in, send a note to support at fantasyguru.com. Let's go back to the Super Bowl. You had a prop bet you were going to share. I think you do, right? I know you've got a bunch of them already. You'll continue to look at this. We'll have the Super Bowl betting guide out at fantasyguru.com. That's coming out soon. I think it's available for purchase now, even though I don't think it's actually dropped yet. I'm sure Tyler's going to be heavily involved with that. But you got a little teaser here for the folks that have hung around with us for an hour today. So what do you got?
Yeah, thanks for hanging out with us, guys. Let me reward you with hopefully a winning prop for this upcoming Super Bowl. If you had been catching our Thursday shows all season, I'd say about half the props I gave out were tackle and assist props. Really big fan of them, and we were super profitable on them this past season. Super profitable these last few years. So I want to keep that rolling into the Super Bowl. One thing about this market is it's very fluid, and when money comes in, these lines and the juice associated with the lines will fluctuate quite a bit. That's with most websites. FanDuel, who has stopped giving out tackle and assist props midway through the year, returned to the action here for Super Bowl. Wow. So FanDuel had some softer lines, some lines that did not agree with the market. And that's currently still the case. I double checked it just an hour ago before hopping on here. Cooper DeJean, a very promising young rookie for the Philadelphia Eagles. I like the under on his 5.5 tackles and assists. That is 4.5 every single other book. We are getting it under 5.5 at minus 114. Not bad juice at all for a line that's typically out of line with the market. Usually if we see one of these outdated lines, it'll be a under 5.5 for minus 150 or something like that. No, we're getting it at -114 at FanDuel, where they're very slow to update any of these plays. It's a really good play in terms of the market just beating the market, where everywhere else has it at 4-5. But DeJean is also a part-time slot defender for Philadelphia, where he'll come on and off the field quite a bit. He's been under this 5.5 line. If we exclude weeks 1 through 4, where he was a part-time guy, he's been under this 5.5 line in 11 of 15 games. And the Chiefs, they're just not a team that ran a lot of 11 personnel. 11 personnel meaning 3 wide receivers, third wide receiver, usually that slot guy. That's what brings on DeJean. Granted, they have added Hollywood Brown late in the year, so they have increased it in the postseason a bit. But this was still 29th in the regular season in terms of 11 personnel usage for the Chiefs. They're a team that really wants to run a lot of 2 tight end sets, extra backs. So I had so many Noah Gray receptions for a big chunk of the year. So again, a part-time player. I like taking the under on 5.5 for Cooper DeJean from Philadelphia. FanDuel only play because everywhere else it's a different line. This is what we talked about prop bets at the beginning of me coming on here, and how some of these lines will change as we get through the week. With everybody else on the under in the 4.5 line, this is a line where I'm not sure how long 5.5 will be around. So I'd recommend playing it now rather than later, because FanDuel may wisen up after seeing a lot of money on one side of this play and drop it, change the odds. So go attack it now if you're interested in this. Cooper DeJean under 5.5. Again, we're beating the books, and we're beating it in terms of a really good matchup here. There's just going to be very sparse tackle and assist opportunities for DeJean on this Sunday game.
So they had it, they took it away, and they brought it back all in the same year.
Correct.
Like
they only brought it back to the Super Bowl.
Just the Super Bowl, yeah. Like
Just
Jeff Vance talked about this too during I think it was last week. He hinted on this multiple times on the Elite Sports Show. And his tagline in essence is, the book's not your friend. Like, they're just not. It's really, it's really weird, because they know what people want to do. They know where they can get the action, but they're obviously they want the action they can win. And so that makes me think, like you're talking about, being smart about this and recognizing that, this is something they didn't really want to do. They realized they probably weren't doing so well with this. That's another angle here too, that if you can play this properly, maybe you're gaining a little bit of an advantage. So that's what Tyler Buecher does. He helps you gain that advantage. Go to fantasyguru.com, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner, read all of his articles, get the Super Bowl betting guide, talk to him in Discord, see him on this show every Thursday at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. And as you said, Tyler, do you have a target date next week for the best ball stuff, or just it's out next week some point?
No, the following week after the Super Bowl.
Oh, after the Super Bowl. I misspoke. Okay,
yep.
I misspoke. Okay, because I thought you said you wanted to wait 1 week. You want to wait multiple weeks for their ADP to settle. Okay, good. That's good. And that would be the place to get it, fantasyguru.com. So, Tyler, thanks for your time today. Appreciate it. It was a great visit as always, even though you're a lunatic that plays best ball in January. It's January. You couldn't even wait till February. But no, it's really cool that people have so much interest and love the game of fantasy football. And glad you're here to help them get better at it. So thanks for your time today.
It's a huge market, continues to grow year after year. I just think we're still at the very beginning of what best ball is. And I think there's going to be more and more platforms for it, more and more contests. One thing I'll probably try to be a bit more cognizant of this year are the structure of the types of contests. So I'm already a bit more interested in the little board being a 50 max instead of the 150 max, giving yourself a better shot to win. Playing some of the smaller field stuff, because I feel like that gives me a better shot in DFS. I assume that would also translate to Underdog and other websites like that for best ball. But thanks again for having me on. It was a blast.
Oh, yeah, you got it, Tyler. Absolutely. He's on every Thursday, Tyler Buecher, fantasyguru.com. So check him out 7 days from now, and you can find him over at the website. Putting it all together to help you have success with the Super Bowl betting guide in 2025. For Tyler, I am Ray. We'll be back tomorrow with Russell Clay. We'll talk football. We'll talk baseball. We'll get it done here on Fantasy Sports Daily. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you tomorrow at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time at Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.